On the surface, Dania Carter's life in Seattle looked exactly the way success was supposed to look. An elegant suburban home, a respected career in corporate law, and a marriage people quietly envied. But one quiet Sunday night, a message lit up Olivia's phone while she was in the shower. Just 6 words from a name Dania had never seen before. "One more week. I miss you already." It was the kind of message that didn't explain anything, yet somehow revealed everything. Because sometimes the most dangerous secrets aren't the ones hidden carefully. They are the ones someone believes you'll never dare to question. And if stories about love, betrayal, and the quiet fractures inside seemingly perfect lives intrigue you, stay a little longer. Some doors should remain closed, but tonight we're opening one. Seattle was the kind of city where rain softened everything. Buildings, conversations, even the sharp edges of people's lives. On most evenings, Dania Carter stood at the large window of his office on the 32nd floor, watching the gray horizon stretch over Puget Sound. From that height, the city looked calm, orderly, predictable. His life was supposed to look the same. At 42, Dania had built the kind of career his younger self once dreamed about. Senior attorney at Whitman and Hale, partner track, a reputation for precision and calm judgment. Clients trusted him with multi-million-dollar negotiations. Junior associates studied his quiet authority. And at home, he had Olivia. At least, that's how the story looked from the outside. That Thursday evening, Daniel arrived home just after 8. The rain had followed him all the way from downtown, tapping softly against the windshield as he drove through the quiet suburban streets of Bellevue. Their house stood at the end of a cul-de-sac, warm light glowing behind the large living room windows. Inside, Olivia was sitting at the kitchen island with her laptop open, the faint blue glow reflecting across her face. "You're late again," she said without looking up. Daniel loosened his tie slowly. "Client dinner ran longer than expected." "That's what you said Tuesday." Her voice wasn't angry, just tired. Daniel walked to the fridge and poured himself a glass of water. The silence between them felt familiar now, like a piece of furniture that had always been there. "How was work?" he asked. Olivia shrugged. "Busy." She closed the laptop with a quiet click. For a moment, neither of them spoke. 5 years ago, they would have filled the room with conversation, stories from their day, jokes about co-workers, plans for the weekend. Now, the air felt heavier. "I might be traveling next week," Olivia said suddenly. Daniel glanced up. "For work?" "Marketing summit in San Diego. 7 days." He nodded automatically. "Sounds important." "It is." Her phone buzzed on the countertop. A message notification lit up the screen briefly before fading again. Olivia picked it up quickly, almost too quickly, and turned the screen away. Daniel noticed the movement but said nothing. "You survive a week without me?" she said lightly. "I usually do." The joke landed somewhere between humor and accusation. Olivia forced a smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Later that night, Daniel sat in the living room reviewing a contract while Olivia packed upstairs. He could hear the faint sound of drawers opening and closing, the zipper of her suitcase sliding back and forth. Normal sounds. Ordinary sounds. But something about them made the house feel strangely unfamiliar. A few minutes later, Olivia came downstairs barefoot, holding her phone. "I'm going to shower," she said. Daniel nodded without looking up from the documents. The bathroom door upstairs closed, and then the phone buzzed again. Still lying on the kitchen counter. Daniel didn't mean to look. At first, he simply glanced at the screen out of reflex. But the message preview appeared before it locked again. 6 words. Just 6. "One more week. I miss you already." The sender's name was Ethan. Daniel stared at the phone for several seconds. His expression didn't change. He didn't touch it, didn't open the message, didn't call upstairs. The shower water began running above him, echoing faintly through the ceiling. For a long moment, Daniel sat perfectly still in the quiet house. Then he returned to reading the contract in front of him, as if nothing had happened. But something had, and in the quiet space between that message and the sound of the running water upstairs, a life that once felt permanent had begun to shift in ways Olivia Carter had not yet imagined. The office building on Mercer Street stayed bright long after most of Seattle had gone home. Inside the marketing department of Virex Systems, the open workspace hummed quietly with the low sound of computers and distant traffic filtering through the glass walls. Most desks were empty, abandoned hours earlier when the rain began falling harder outside. Olivia Carter was still there. Her laptop screen cast a pale glow across her tired face as she scrolled through the latest campaign analytics. The launch for Virex's newest productivity app was only 2 weeks away, and the entire marketing strategy felt like it was balanced on fragile glass. She rubbed her eyes. "Still fighting with numbers?" The voice came from behind her. Olivia turned slightly in her chair. Ethan Blake leaned against the edge of a nearby desk, holding 2 paper coffee cups. He was smiling the way he usually did, easy, relaxed, as though deadlines and corporate pressure were simply background noise. "You're still here too," Olivia said. "Product team emergency," Ethan replied, setting one of the cups beside her keyboard. "Thought you might need this." She glanced at the coffee. "You're enabling my bad habits. Or saving the campaign." Olivia took a small sip. It was still hot. "Thank you." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside the wide office windows, rain streaked the glass in long silver lines. Ethan pulled a chair over and sat beside her desk. "What's the verdict?" he asked. "Are we about to become Silicon Valley legends or LinkedIn cautionary tales?" Olivia laughed softly. "That depends on whether people actually understand the product." "You explained it to me," Ethan said. "That counts." "That's because you designed half of it." Still needed a translation. There was something about the way he looked at her when he spoke, steady, attentive, that made the quiet office feel smaller. Daniel used to look at her like that once. The thought appeared and disappeared before she could fully examine it. Ethan leaned closer to the screen. "You're overthinking the messaging," he said gently. "People don't buy software because it's perfect. They buy it because it makes them feel smarter than everyone else." Olivia tilted her head. "That's disturbingly accurate. I'm a product designer. I specialize in disturbing truths." They worked side by side for another hour, adjusting slides and rewriting taglines. Occasionally, their shoulders brushed when both leaned toward the keyboard. Each time, Olivia felt a small jolt she pretended not to notice. At nearly 11, the office lights dimmed automatically, the building's overnight system reminding them it was time to leave. Ethan stretched his arms. "Dinner?" Olivia blinked. "At 11? There's a taco place open on Pike Street. Questionable food, but excellent bed decisions." She hesitated. "I should go home." Ethan didn't push. He simply nodded. "Fair." But when Olivia glanced at the empty office again, the thought of returning to the quiet house in Bellevue felt strangely heavy. Daniel would still be working, or reading, or already asleep. "Maybe just something quick," she said. Ethan's smile returned. Outside, the rain had softened into a fine mist as they walked down the nearly empty street. Seattle at night had a different rhythm, slower, more reflective. They found a small table inside the taco bar, neon lights flickering against the window. Ethan watched her as she laughed at something he said, the tension in her shoulders slowly disappearing. "You know," he said after a moment, "I've never seen you relax like this at the office." "That's because marketing directors aren't supposed to relax. Maybe they should." Olivia looked down at her drink. "You make things sound simple. Sometimes they are." Her phone buzzed in her purse. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. "Running late tonight. Don't wait up." She stared at the message for a moment. Then she locked the screen. Ethan noticed the silence. "Everything okay?" Olivia slipped the phone back into her purse. "Yes," she said. And in that moment, she realized something unsettling. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about home. Weeks later, when Ethan would casually suggest the trip to San Diego, 7 days away from Seattle, away from expectations, away from rules, Olivia would remember this quiet night, the tacos, the rain, the way she had chosen not to answer the message waiting on her phone. Because sometimes, crossing the line doesn't happen in a single reckless moment. Sometimes it begins with something much smaller. A conversation that lasts too long, a laugh that feels too easy, or a message you decide not to answer. The San Diego sunlight felt different from Seattle's gray quiet. It was brighter, warmer, almost careless. From the balcony of the hotel room, Olivia Carter watched the Pacific glitter under the morning sky. Palm trees swayed along the boardwalk below, and somewhere in the distance a street musician played the guitar softly enough that the sound drifted upward like a memory. For a moment, it felt like a different life. Behind her, Ethan moved around the room, barefoot on the polished floor. He had already opened the balcony doors fully, letting the ocean air move through the curtains. "You look like someone who forgot how to breathe," he said. Olivia smiled faintly. "I think I forgot what sunlight looks like. Seattle will forgive you." She leaned against the railing. Her phone rested on the small glass table beside her. The screen had lit up several times that morning. Emails, notifications, 2 missed calls from the office. None from Danielle. That should have made things easier. Instead, the silence felt strangely loud. Ethan stepped beside her, handing her a cup of coffee. "Two irresponsible decisions," he said lightly. Olivia raised an eyebrow. "That's comforting. I prefer the phrase temporary freedom." She laughed softly. "Is that what this is?" Ethan shrugged. "For a week, it can be anything we want." The simplicity of the statement was intoxicating. For months, their connection had existed in the narrow spaces between responsibilities, late nights at the office, quick lunches, stolen conversations in hallways. Here, those boundaries had vanished. No colleagues, no meetings, no Daniel. Just sunlight and the quiet permission to pretend none of the rest existed. Later that afternoon, they walked along La Jolla Cove, the ocean stretching endlessly beside them. Olivia had taken off her shoes, letting the cold water wash over her feet. "You're smiling again," Ethan said. "Am I? You didn't realize you stopped." She watched the waves roll toward the shore. "I used to think adulthood meant everything eventually settles," she said. "And now? Now I think it just gets quieter." Ethan studied her expression. "You deserve more than quiet." The words stayed with her longer than they should have. Back in Seattle, the rain had returned. Daniel Carter sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, a legal document half finished on the screen. The house felt larger when Olivia wasn't there, or maybe just emptier. He stood up to make coffee and noticed the small envelope on the counter where Olivia usually dropped her mail. A travel confirmation had slipped halfway out. Daniel pulled it free. The return flight from San Diego was scheduled for Sunday evening. He frowned slightly. The marketing summit she mentioned was supposed to run through Monday. Daniel turned the paper over slowly. Maybe she had changed flights. Maybe the schedule shifted. None of it seemed particularly important. Still, something about it lingered in the back of his mind like an unfinished sentence. Later that night, Daniel opened their shared credit card account online to check a transaction from the grocery store. Another charge appeared further down the list. Hotel Pacific Crest San Diego. 2 guests. He stared at the screen for several seconds. It could have been a booking error, a company reservation, something administrative. Daniel leaned back in his chair. He had spent most of his life solving problems by examining details others overlooked. Contracts, evidence, patterns. His eyes returned to the transaction again. 2 guests. Upstairs, Olivia's closet door remained slightly open. Daniel walked up slowly, the quiet house echoing with the sound of his footsteps. Inside the closet, her suitcase was gone. That wasn't unusual. But the small leather travel pouch she always used for work conferences still sat on the shelf. Instead, the larger one was missing. The one she usually packed for vacations. Daniel stood there longer than necessary. Somewhere across the country, Olivia laughed as Ethan pointed toward a group of sea lions resting on the rocks below the cliffs. For a moment she forgot entirely about Seattle. Forgot the quiet house. Forgot the man who still believed she was attending a marketing conference. Back in the closet, Daniel closed the door carefully. He didn't slam it. Didn't raise his voice. Instead, he walked back downstairs and sat in the dark living room. Outside, the rain tapped softly against the windows. On the coffee table lay Olivia's old tablet. A notification appeared briefly on the screen before fading. Ethan Blake sent a photo. Daniel looked at the name. And in the silent house, the first pieces of a truth he had never imagined began slowly arranging themselves into something impossible to ignore. The rain in Seattle had a way of making the city feel suspended in time. On Wednesday morning, Daniel Carter arrived at Whitman and Hale earlier than usual. The office floor was nearly empty, the fluorescent lights humming softly above the rows of glass-walled offices. He placed his briefcase on his desk and sat down without turning on the overhead lamp. For a long moment, he simply stared at the city outside. Traffic moved slowly along the wet streets below, headlights reflecting across the pavement like blurred constellations. Daniel had slept very little. Not because he had spent the night searching for answers, but because the answers had already begun forming on their own. The travel confirmation, the hotel charge for 2 guests, the photo notification from Ethan Blake that had briefly appeared on Olivia's tablet before disappearing. None of it had been dramatic. No obvious confession, no explosive evidence. Just fragments. But fragments were often enough. Daniel opened his laptop and began reviewing the draft contract, waiting on his screen. His work had always been the one place where emotions remained irrelevant. Language either held up in court or it didn't. Evidence either existed or it didn't. Personal interpretations rarely mattered. He wished marriage worked the same way. At noon, his assistant knocked gently on the door. "Daniel, your 2 o'clock meeting just moved to tomorrow." "Thank you." She hesitated a moment longer. "You look tired." "I'm fine." When she left, Daniel leaned back in his chair. Fine. The word felt strangely hollow. Across the country, the sun was beginning to warm the beach outside Olivia's hotel. She lay on a lounge chair beside the pool, sunglasses shielding her eyes while Ethan swam slow circles through the clear blue water. "You're thinking again," he called out. Olivia smiled lazily. "That's a dangerous habit?" "On vacation, yes." She watched him climb out of the pool, water glistening across his shoulders. Everything here felt suspended outside consequence. No meetings, no pressure, no quiet tension waiting at the dinner table back home. Her phone buzzed beside the chair. An email from work. Another message from a colleague asking about the marketing summit schedule. Olivia typed a quick response. "Panels all day, networking tonight, exhausted already." The lie slipped easily into the message. She barely noticed. Back in Seattle, Daniel sat alone at the kitchen table that evening. The house felt unusually quiet without Olivia moving through the rooms. Her absence had always been temporary before business trips, conferences, short travel assignments. This time felt different, not because she was gone, but because something inside him had shifted the moment he realized where she really was. Daniel opened the refrigerator and studied the shelves. For years, Olivia had been the one who filled it, carefully planned groceries, fresh vegetables, prepared meals she insisted they should eat together. Tonight, he ordered takeout instead. While waiting for the delivery, he walked slowly through the living room. Their wedding photo still stood on the shelf beside the fireplace. Olivia laughing at something the photographer had said. Daniel holding her hand. He picked up the frame and looked at it for several seconds. Not with anger, not even with bitterness. Just with a quiet curiosity about how two people in the same photograph could eventually become strangers. The doorbell rang. Daniel set the photo back down and opened the door. The delivery driver handed him the bag and left quickly in the rain. Inside, Daniel ate alone at the table where they usually sat together. Halfway through the meal, his phone buzzed. A message from Olivia. Conference dinner ran late tonight. I'm exhausted. Miss you. Daniel read the message twice. Then he placed the phone face down on the table. He didn't reply. Upstairs, Olivia's closet door remained slightly open, the empty space where her suitcase had been still visible in the dim hallway light. Daniel finished his meal slowly. Then he stood, washed the dishes, and turned off the kitchen lights. No confrontation, no accusations, just silence. And in that silence, Daniel Carter began doing something Olivia could not yet see. He was slowly learning how his life might look without her. The plane landed in Seattle just after sunset. From the small oval window, Olivia Carter watched the city lights scatter across the dark landscape like reflections on water. The familiar gray clouds hung low over the skyline, swallowing the last traces of daylight. Seattle had never looked quite so distant before. Beside her, passengers gathered their bags and shuffled slowly into the aisle. The soft sounds of overhead compartments opening filled the cabin. Olivia stayed seated a moment longer. For 7 days, San Diego had existed like a suspended dream. Sunlight, ocean air, and the reckless comfort of pretending consequences could wait. Now the dream was over. Reality waited on the other side of the airport doors. Her phone buzzed as the plane taxied toward the gate. A message from Ethan. Already miss you. Olivia read it quickly, then locked the screen. There was nothing to say that wouldn't complicate things further. The drive from SeaTac Airport to Bellevue felt longer than usual. Rain tapped softly against the windshield while the freeway lights stretched endlessly ahead. Olivia kept rehearsing the moment she would walk to the front door. Daniel would be waiting, maybe angry, maybe hurt, maybe quietly devastated. She tried to prepare herself for every version of the conversation. None of them felt easy. By the time she pulled into the driveway, the house lights were already on. Daniel was home. Her chest tightened slightly as she stepped out of the car and walked up the familiar stone path. The front door opened easily. Inside, the living room looked almost the same. Almost. The lamp beside the couch had been moved to the opposite side of the room. The stack of magazines on the coffee table had disappeared. Small details, but enough to make the space feel subtly unfamiliar. Daniel? She called. He appeared a moment later from the hallway, wearing a simple gray sweater and dark jeans. For a second, neither of them spoke. Olivia studied his face carefully, searching for the emotion she had been expecting all week. But Daniel looked calm. Not cold, not angry, just calm. "You're back," he said. His voice sounded exactly the same as always. "Yes." She set her suitcase near the door. "I thought you might still be at work. I left early today." A pause stretched quietly between them. Olivia felt suddenly unsure what to say next. The apology she had prepared during the flight seemed too dramatic now. The explanation felt unnecessary without accusation. "How was the conference?" Daniel asked. The question landed softly in the room. Olivia blinked. "It was busy," she said. "Panels, networking, presentations." The lies lined up automatically in her mind, ready to form a believable story. Daniel nodded once. "Good." That was all. No follow-up questions. No suspicion in his voice. The absence of reaction unsettled her more than anger might have. "I brought some notes for the team," Olivia added awkwardly. "Marketing trends, new strategies." "That's helpful." Daniel walked toward the kitchen. "Did you eat yet?" The question felt strangely ordinary. "Not really. I ordered Thai earlier. There's still some in the fridge." Olivia followed him slowly. The kitchen looked cleaner than usual, the counters almost empty. A few things have been rearranged, utensils moved, a different set of dishes placed near the sink. Daniel opened the refrigerator and placed the container on the counter. "You must be tired," he said. "It was a long flight." She watched him carefully as he moved around the kitchen. No tension in his shoulders, no tightness in his voice, just quiet efficiency. "You don't seem surprised to see me," she said before she could stop herself. Daniel glanced at her briefly. You told me you were coming home tonight. Yes, but I mean... She stopped. What exactly had she expected? A fight? A confession forced out under pressure? Instead, Daniel simply leaned against the counter. How was San Diego? He asked. This time the question felt different. Not suspicious, but heavier somehow. Olivia hesitated for a fraction of a second. Warm, she said quietly. Daniel nodded. I imagine it was. The rain outside tapped steadily against the windows. Olivia opened the container of food, but suddenly realized she wasn't hungry anymore. Something about the house felt unfamiliar. Not physically, emotionally. As if the invisible structure of their life together had shifted while she was gone. She studied Daniel's expression again. You seem different, she said. Daniel met her gaze calmly. People change. The words were simple, but something inside them felt final in a way Olivia couldn't quite understand yet. And standing in the quiet kitchen, Olivia felt the first faint sense of a truth she had not prepared herself for. The life she had walked away from for 1 week might not have been waiting for her to come back. The house had gone quiet again by late evening. Olivia stood at the sink, rinsing the last dish from dinner. The soft sound of running water filled the kitchen while Wayne brushed gently against the windows. Daniel sat at the dining table behind her, reading something on his laptop. Neither of them had spoken much since she returned. The silence had weight now. Not the comfortable kind that sometimes settled between couples who had known each other too long. This silence felt deliberate. Olivia dried her hands and turned around. You've been very calm, she said carefully. Daniel looked up. Is that unusual? After a week apart? It wasn't the first time you traveled. That's not what I mean. Daniel closed the laptop slowly. The small click of the lid echoed through the room. For a moment he studied her face, as though deciding something. Then he leaned back slightly in his chair. How long have you known Ethan? He asked. The name fell into the room like a stone into water. Olivia felt the air leave her lungs. What? Ethan Blake, Daniel repeated quietly. Product designer at Virex Systems. Her mind raced instantly. Did someone from work mention something? Did Daniel see a message? Her voice came out unsteady. He's a colleague. Daniel nodded once. I assumed so. Olivia forced a small laugh. Why are you asking? Daniel's gaze never left her. Because I saw the hotel charge. The room seemed to shrink around her. What hotel? The Pacific Crest in San Diego. Olivia felt her heartbeat rising. It was booked through the company, for 2 guests. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Daniel continued calmly. And because Ethan sent a photo to your tablet. The words were spoken gently, almost kindly, which somehow made them worse. Olivia gripped the back of the chair beside her. You went through my things? No, Daniel said quietly. Your tablet lit up on the coffee table. Silence filled the kitchen. Olivia could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock. You knew, she whispered. Yes. How long? Daniel thought for a moment. Wednesday night. The timeline ran through Olivia's mind instantly. That meant he had known while she was still in San Diego. You didn't call, she said. No. You didn't say anything. No. Her voice rose slightly. Why? Daniel's expression remained steady. Because I needed to understand something first. What? He folded his hands together on the table. Whether the person I married still existed. The words landed harder than any accusation. Olivia looked down at the floor. Daniel, it wasn't supposed to... He raised the hand gently. Please don't explain it like that. His tone was calm but firm. I'm not interested in the timeline of how mistakes happen. Olivia felt tears rising despite herself. It didn't mean what you think. Daniel considered her for a moment. You spent a week with him. The statement was neutral, not angry, just factual. Yes, she whispered. And you told me you were attending a conference. I didn't know how to tell you. Daniel nodded slightly. That part I believe. Olivia wiped her eyes quickly. I was confused. I felt disconnected from everything here. From me, Daniel said quietly. She didn't answer. Because the silence was already the answer. Daniel leaned back in his chair. You know what surprised me the most? He said. Olivia looked up slowly. It wasn't the affair. Her brow furrowed slightly. Then what? Daniel glanced briefly toward the living room, where their wedding photo still stood on the shelf. It was how easy it seemed for you to leave. Olivia felt something inside her chest tighten painfully. I came back. Yes, Daniel said softly. But not because you were ready to tell the truth. The room grew still again. You came back because the week ended. The words were not cruel, but they carried a quiet finality that made Olivia feel suddenly very small. I never meant to hurt you, she said. Daniel studied her face for a long moment. I believe that. Hope flickered briefly in her chest, but the next sentence extinguished it. That doesn't change what you did. Olivia's voice trembled. Can we fix this? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked around the kitchen, the place where they had once cooked together, laughed, argued about small things that now seemed almost precious. Then he looked back at her. "The problem isn't Ethan," he said. "Then what is it?" Daniel's voice remained calm. "The problem is that I don't know if I can ever trust the version of reality you give me again." Olivia felt the full weight of the words settle into the space between them, because she suddenly understood something painful. The affair hadn't just broken their marriage. It had broken the invisible structure of truth that held it together. And once that structure collapsed, there was no guarantee it could ever be rebuilt. The Virex Systems office looked exactly the same as it had 2 weeks earlier. The same glass walls, the same rows of open desks, the same low murmur of keyboards and quiet conversations drifting through the marketing floor. But as Olivia Carter walked through the entrance that Monday morning, something felt unmistakably different. People looked up. Not long, just long enough. Then their eyes dropped quickly back to their screens. It was subtle, but unmistakable. Olivia placed her bag beside her desk and opened her laptop, trying to ignore the tension she could feel lingering in the room. Her email inbox flooded instantly with messages, project updates, campaign reports, scheduling requests, and one meeting request from Human Resources. Her stomach tightened. Across the office, Ethan sat at his usual workstation near the product development team. He glanced toward her briefly. Their eyes met, for half a second. Then he looked away. Olivia stared at him, confused. That hadn't happened before. They had spent an entire week together, just days earlier, whispering plans on hotel balconies, talking about possibilities neither of them had fully defined. Now he looked like a stranger. Her phone buzzed with a message. HR meeting, 10:30, conference room B. The hour leading up to the meeting passed painfully slowly. Olivia tried to focus on her campaign notes, but the words blurred on the screen. When the time came, she walked down the hallway toward the small conference room. Inside sat 2 HR representatives and her department director, Claire Morgan. Claire's expression was professional but guarded. "Olivia," she said gently, "please have a seat." Olivia sat down slowly. One of the HR managers folded her hands. "There have been concerns raised regarding a personal relationship between you and another employee." Olivia felt the room spin slightly. "Who raised them?" "I'm afraid we can't discuss the source." Claire spoke carefully. "This isn't about judgment, but when relationships occur between departments involved in the same product launch, it can create conflicts of interest." Olivia's voice came out quieter than she expected. "Are you referring to Ethan?" The HR manager nodded. Olivia's heart sank. "Is he here too?" "No." The word felt heavier than it should have. "We've already spoken with Mr. Blake," Claire said. "And?" Claire hesitated slightly. "He stated that the relationship was brief and personal, and that he wishes to keep professional boundaries moving forward." Olivia stared at her. "Brief?" The word sounded unfamiliar. A week in San Diego, months of late-night conversations, the slow emotional drift that had brought her there. "Those were his words?" she asked. Claire nodded. "Yes." Something inside Olivia shifted quietly. Not anger, not even betrayal, just a sudden understanding of how differently 2 people could remember the same story. When the meeting ended, Olivia returned to her desk in silence. Across the room, Ethan was already gathering his things. He slipped on his jacket and headed toward the elevator without looking back. For a moment, Olivia considered calling his name, asking him why, but the answer had already been given. Some people only share the fantasy, not the consequences. That evening, Daniel Carter left the law firm earlier than usual. Instead of driving straight home, he stopped at a small park overlooking Lake Washington. The rain had paused briefly, leaving the air cool and quiet. He sat on a wooden bench facing the water. For weeks, anger had seemed like the obvious reaction to everything that happened. But strangely, Daniel didn't feel angry anymore. Just clear. He thought about the years of routine he and Olivia had built together. The dinners, the conversations, the quiet assumptions that life would continue in the same direction forever. Maybe that had been the real illusion. Daniel took a slow breath and watched a small sailboat drift across the dark water. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from Olivia. "Can we talk tonight?" Daniel read the message once, then again. He slipped the phone back into his pocket without replying. Not because he wanted to punish her, but because for the first time in a long time, he realized something important. Peace didn't always come from fighting for something. Sometimes it came from understanding when it was already gone. Seattle's winter had arrived quietly. By December, the rain had settled into the slow rhythm that defined the city's soft gray mornings, early sunsets, and streets reflecting the glow of holiday lights. Daniel Carter walked along the waterfront just after sunset, his coat pulled tight against the cold air drifting in from Elliott Bay. The city had changed in small ways over the past few months. Or perhaps it was simply the way he saw it now. Life after the separation had been quieter than Daniel expected. No dramatic legal battles, no shouting matches across lawyers' offices. Just a series of calm decisions that slowly unraveled the life he and Olivia once shared. The house in Bellevue had been sold, most of the furniture divided, the routines dissolved. Daniel now lived in a smaller apartment closer to downtown, only 10 minutes from the law firm. The space felt simpler, less crowded with expectations. At first, the silence had felt heavy, but over time, something unexpected had taken its place. Peace. Not the kind people talked about in dramatic speeches or inspirational quotes, just the quiet relief of knowing that nothing hidden waited beneath the surface of his life anymore. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from a junior associate about a client meeting tomorrow morning. Daniel replied quickly, then slipped the phone away. As he walked along the pier, the wind carried the distant sound of laughter from a group of tourists taking photos near the Ferris wheel. Life kept moving, it always did. Across the city, Olivia Carter sat alone in a small apartment overlooking a busy intersection in Capitol Hill. The building was older, the walls thinner than the house she used to live in. Traffic lights flashed red and green through the window while rain streaked slowly down the glass. Her laptop sat open on the kitchen table, but she hadn't looked at the screen in nearly 20 minutes. Work had changed. After the HR investigation, the company had reassigned her to a smaller division of the marketing department. Not a demotion exactly, but close enough that everyone understood what it meant. Ethan Blake had transferred to another project team shortly afterward. They had spoken only once since the meeting with HR. A brief conversation in the hallway. Awkward, polite, empty. The connection that once felt so powerful had disappeared while consequences arrived. Olivia wrapped her hands around the mug of tea growing cold beside her. For months she had replayed the same question in her mind. When did everything start falling apart? It hadn't been the trip to San Diego, not really. The damage had begun long before that. In the quiet distance she allowed to grow between herself and Daniel. In the conversations she stopped having. In the attention she started seeking somewhere else. The affair had simply been the moment everything visible finally broke. Her phone buzzed softly on the table. A notification from social media. Someone had posted photos from a mutual friend's holiday party. Olivia scrolled through them absent-mindedly. Near the end of the album, she paused. Daniel stood in one of the photos beside a group of colleagues, holding a glass of wine while someone said something that made him laugh. It was a relaxed expression she hadn't seen on his face in years. Not forced, not polite, just genuine. Olivia studied the image quietly. For a long moment, she imagined what might have happened if she had made different choices. If she had spoken honestly about the distance in their marriage instead of escaping it. If she had answered the message Daniel sent that night months ago, asking if she wanted to talk. But life didn't offer revisions, only consequences. She closed the photo and set the phone down again. Outside, the rain continued falling steadily across the city. Somewhere in Seattle, Daniel Carter walked back toward his apartment, the lights of the waterfront reflecting softly in the dark water. He didn't think about Olivia often anymore. Not with anger, not even with sadness. Just as part of a life that once existed. Because sometimes the deepest consequence of betrayal isn't revenge. It isn't punishment. It's something quieter. The slow realization that the life you once walked away from has already learned how to move forward without you.